Hello, friends. Welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Let's start our video with a revenge story over a horrible employee. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Enjoy the goose chase. I used to work with a woman we'll call Connie. This was a large company in a professional office setting. Now, Connie was very well known to HR as she had a habit of losing her temper and yelling at people and cussing them out. HR had been trying for years to get rid of her, but she always threatened to sue. She had such a reputation that she'd earned the nickname Hurricane Connie. Now, one day Connie came into my office because a database that I'd rebuilt a year earlier from a previous version didn't have the file she needed, even though no one on the entire team had asked about this file for over a year, including her. It was the single most critical file in the company, and I was an idiot. She actually used a few other choice names for leaving it out. I pointed this out to her and told her to leave my office before I involved her boss. She left, but cussed my name all the way back to her office. Now comes the revenge. Connie was an avid gambler. She drove the 3 to 4 hours to go to the casinos at least twice a month. She was constantly playing lottery and lotto scratch-off tickets. She loved to talk about how much money she was winning all the time. So I went out and bought a package of fake scratch-off tickets. For those not familiar with them, they look just like a real lotto ticket. You scratch it, and you, of course, will win. On the back, in fine details, it says something along the lines of redeemable over the rainbow in Fantasyland. Not a real ticket. Better luck next time, loser. I brought this ticket up to the office, and when she was out for a meeting, I casually dropped it into the massive purse she always had open at the end of her desk. No invasion of privacy or anything on my part. It was always wide open, and I literally just dropped it in and went on about my business. I waited a few weeks and asked a mutual friend if he'd heard anything from Connie about a prank. I knew he liked me more than her and would keep my secret. He told me she'd scratched the ticket and got super excited, thinking she'd won $50,000. She'd driven to the gas station for them to check and was PO'd when it wouldn't scan. She drove to 3 other stations before the last station flipped it over and read the back of the ticket. Once Connie realized she'd been pranked, she started quietly asking people if they knew who did it so she could file a complaint with HR. She never found out it was me, and everyone had a good laugh at her as the story got out. Should have done one for a few million so she would have quit. And our next story. Bad parent? Go to jail. I used to be a therapist. I trained hard not only in my master's degree, which I managed to get, one of the best programs available in the States after working my butt off in undergrad, but also afterwards in seeking out opportunities to get evidence-based training. I regularly saw unlicensed therapists who'd failed the licensure exam multiple times get promoted to supervisor positions just because they were good at making their companies money. I eventually got out because I couldn't stand the focus on profit over people, which is literally impossible to avoid unless you say F everyone and go into business by yourself. This case was about a year before I got out. I was doing trauma therapy with several children from one family, meeting with each of them individually and sometimes together per their request. It was easily one of the most effed up cases I ever dealt with in my career, and that's saying something. You see, I work for an agency that contracted with juvenile justice and child protective services. All of my clients were mandated offenders or kids who'd been removed from abusive homes. In this particular case, the abuse was beyond egregious, and I remember after the first session where the kids really opened up and told me what happened, I had nightmares all night. It was so bad. But the CPS case manager, referred to from now on as CM, had specifically requested me because of my success with difficult cases. My first clue this wasn't going to go well was at the initial family team meeting. These happen monthly with the family, CPS, and all their service providers to discuss goals and progress, etc. You're ultimately working towards closing their case when they've done all their treatment, and most importantly, the kids are safe, have received all the care they need, and the caregivers have demonstrated their ability to provide an appropriate home and parenting. The caregivers, let's call them A and B, were selfish, unhinged effers. They denied the abuse, lied for one another, and regularly said horrible things about these kids, insisting they were little liars who deserved punishment for causing all this trouble by speaking up. The thing that was even worse was this team of 15 or so providers would not effing stand up to A or B. I got into this work because I had trauma as a kid and wanted to pay forward what my therapist had done for me when I recovered. Months went by and these poor little kids couldn't make headway because their insane parents were not only compliant, they were actually actively causing trouble for everyone on the case. You can't do trauma work if you don't feel safe, and for these children, they were personally living weekly drama. It was that chaotic. A and B made wild accusations against most of the people on the case. One of the other clinicians got into a car wreck one day during work hours. When A and B found out, they demanded she take a drug test. Until she did, they refused to comply further with services. Thankfully, her agency stood with her and defended her. She definitely was not on drugs, I can assure you. It was absurd. But the CM allowed all this crap to go unchallenged. She was afraid of both A and B, and one by one she fired the people they targeted or made them so disgusted with their lack of spine they left until I was the only original team member left. Up until this point, these a-holes wouldn't come near me because my reputation was impeccable. I knew a lot of people in the county and their kids loved me. I was the only adult in their life refusing to back down against A and B. Try as she might, CM couldn't get the kids to say what she wanted, that everything was much better and she could close the case. This is where the revenge comes in. Some months have gone by, almost a year, and I'm getting burned the F out, but I'm hanging on until I can successfully close this case and one other. Around this time, CM brings on a new therapist for B, the primary offender, who we'll call Smugface. Smugface was unexpectedly announced and introduced at one of our monthly meetings and immediately made it clear she didn't like me. Not by being rude in an aggressive way, but by being condescending. For the next 3 months, CM would try every meeting to close the case, and because nothing was better, I fought her every time. Because I had at least 1 or 2 people agree with me, but now it was met with silence. It soon became CM and Smugface were friends, and Smugface had been brought on to squish me out. She tried every meeting to imply I wasn't qualified, that I was stupid and had clearly misunderstood the children's wishes, that I was taking on a personal crusade against the parents. And she'd do it with a crap-eating grin on her face each time. I was tired, and it did make me mad, but I tried not to lose my cool and give her what she wanted. Because of the crap shows caused by A, B, and CM's spinelessness, no one stood with me at all anymore. I was on my own. For cases mandated by the court, you usually have to attend court dates to testify to progress and make recommendations on whether it should remain open or close. The tension was building before our next court date, and CM was laying groundwork through team meetings, emails, and her reports to discredit me and close the case. In private, I felt like I was losing my mind, but I stayed in touch with everyone I'd known on the case, kept my documentation like it was going to be examined by the FBI, and bit my tongue. I did everything I could to reassure the children I would fight for them to stay in their safer placement with relatives and waited for court day. When it came, Smugface was there with A and B, looking fat with satisfaction. Well, just fat. She smirked at me every few seconds, tossing her hair over one shoulder and chuckling. I pretended she didn't exist and waited patiently to be admitted to the courtroom. When our case number was called, I filed in with her, A, B, and CM. Service providers sit in the back at this courthouse with members of the family, their lawyers, and CPS in front. As we took our seats, the doors behind me opened and every service provider who'd ever been on the case came strolling in, one after the other, until there were no seats left and people were standing. Smugface's eyes just kept getting wider and wider until she wasn't so smug anymore. After the judge called everyone to order, the lawyers spoke for the family and then CPS got to give a report and their recommendations. Then the judge asked service providers if they have anything to say. CM, of course, recommended we close the case. Weak, self-ed wretch. Then the judge called on me, and I deferred to Smugface, saying that since the case hinged on B's progress, we should hear her thoughts first. Smugface stammered and sweated under the collective gaze of all these other professionals glaring at her. It was dead silent, but had the tension of many buzzing bees, and said B was doing well and the case should be closed. She tried to throw in some more professional-sounding jargon at the end, jutting out her chin and collecting herself a bit after seeing my deadpan stare. But the judge turned to me. I stuck to my guns and expressed all my doubts in full, then reported on the kids and my recommendations. The judge, who was one of the toughest in juvenile court, actually stated to the room that she had respect for my views because of the good work she knew I'd done with other children. I was really surprised by this. But the best part came next. The judge asked if anyone else wanted to speak, and every single other person agreed with my recommendations. They called out all of A and B's bullcrap, one after the other, giving so many documented examples it was dizzying. All while Smugface is getting stonier and CM is just shrinking in her chair. The final blow came from the children's court-appointed advocate, who had never once betrayed any agreement with me in meetings. She said she completely agreed with my and others' assessment and could not see how CPS could justify closing the case. The judge calmly declared the case would remain open, told off CM for her being out of touch with the case, and sent us on our way. On the way out, I looked at Smugface and she refused to acknowledge me. I smiled all the way to my car, but the best was yet to come. The good news is the kids were fine in the end. A got caught in too many lies and finally went to prison, something related to the sale of illegal substances, and I was able to move on to a new career. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.